Hi, my darlings. I'm Sophie Darling, and welcome back to the channel. If you love anime, heartfelt reactions, and deep dives into symbolism and themes, then you're in the right place. Before we jump into today's reaction, don't forget to hit that like button to show some love, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a moment of fun. And if you want even more exclusive content like early access to my reactions, full length anime watch alongs, and an amazing community of fellow anime lovers, please check out my Patreon. You can find a link in the description box below. Your support truly means the world as it helps to keep these reactions coming, and I'd love to have you join our cozy little anime family. Today, we are reacting to episode 9 of season 4 of Attack on Titan, and I'm not emotionally ready for what is about to happen in this episode. Last episode was heart-wrenching. We lost Sasha so unexpectedly. There was instances of foreshadowing between Gabi having seen Sasha up on the roof, honing in on her. Then the beginning of episode 8 with Connie wrapping his arms around Jean and Sasha being like, I'm so glad I didn't lose you guys. You guys are truly special to me. I can't. I am just not ready for the way that they're going to drag out Sasha's death, and not drag out in a bad way, but in a meaningful way. They're gonna gut punch us. I know it's coming because there was a big time jump, which means we don't know what's happened in that space of time, and they're gonna show us. They're gonna 100% show us what Sasha's been up to, the life she's had, and then we're gonna feel like absolute shit because we've just lost her, and all these fun, happy memories that she had and all these plans for the future aren't gonna come into fruition because I know just how cruel this show can be. They are absolutely going to rub salt into the wound. And I've done my makeup really, really nice, and I should not have done it. I think at this point in time, I should just film without makeup on because I'm just gonna cry incessantly. I know I am. I had a really good run of like 4 episodes where there was no crying, 5 episodes with no crying. Yeah, 5 episodes of no crying. And I know for a fact every single episode since I've teared up or I've actually cried, and it's just going to get subsequently worse, isn't it? I'm just going to be emotionally brutalized for the rest of the season. And I'm going to sit here and be like, thanks, yay, this is great. I'm going to be thanking Isayama for the pleasure of emotionally brutalizing me because the show is phenomenal. There's absolutely no way that I wouldn't be continuing it. But just based on Sasha's death, the fact there was a time jump, they're going to rub salt into the wound by showing what she got up to in the time since, and potentially what her future ambitions were that never come into fruition because we've just lost her. There's no greater gut punch than a character that we have loved since series 1 that we have just tragically lost, having ambitions that are never going to happen because she's been killed, she's dead. And based on the fact that we still have so many episodes to go, they're absolutely going to rub this in. And I imagine there's going to be comments that are really angry at me for not hating Gabi. And that's okay. I can understand why people hate Gabi. It's an emotional response because Sasha is such a beloved character. We've been with her since series 1. We've seen her grow. We've seen her develop. We've seen her gain courage. We've seen her step into her own as a soldier. Losing her is incredibly hard and incredibly tragic, especially in such a way of her being shot in the back. She didn't stand a chance. She didn't even have time to defend herself. She didn't even have time to reason with Gabi or even speak with her. Not that I think it would have made any difference whatsoever. But I can understand that people are angry because they lost Sasha and they love Sasha. She was one of my favorite characters, and I'm sure she was a lot of people's favorite characters. She was so sweet. She was so engaging. She was the comic relief. Her and Connie's friendship was iconic. It's hard to lose her, especially because she's been with us for so long and you kind of got comfortable thinking that nothing would happen, only to have the rug pulled out from under your feet so unexpectedly. So I get why people dislike Gabi. I get that they think that Gabi should have been thrown from the airship. I get that they hate Gabi. I personally cannot. And that's because I'm a very empathetic person. And I get it and I can empathize with people's feelings. But at the same time, I personally cannot hate Gabi because of the story trajectory. What the story is showing us is another child repeating the cycle of violence because it's been inflicted upon her, her friends, her home. And people are going to sit and argue with me that Gabi is different to Eren because she's been raised for this. She already wants to kill them all. She already sees them as the devil. She's wants to actively target them. And yes, but you also have to remember she is a child repeating that rhetoric. She's been trained all her life to be a soldier. She doesn't know anything different. She hasn't experienced anything different. The same as Annie, Reiner, and Bertold. She's very similar to them, but in the same sense, she's also similar to Eren. Both of them watch people they loved and cared about ripped away from them unexpectedly. And yes, they knew that war was coming, but they didn't know how soon it was going to strike. But even if you know war's coming, it still doesn't prepare you for the sudden loss of the people that you love most in your life. And she adored Sophia and she adored Udo. She may have shown it in odd ways, but she did love them and she doesn't understand why she had to lose them. Much in the same way that Eren didn't understand why he had to lose his mum, why he had to lose the people he cared about. They're similar in that regards. They're two children subsumed into a cycle of violence, subsumed into war and conflict, who are now irrevocably traumatized and repeating that cycle of vengeance. I think that's the dynamic that they're trying to show. They're trying to show the parallels. We had Eren in Paradise going through the same situation, and now we're seeing the opposite side of it, but in Marley with Gabi. This isn't to say that they are identical characters, of course they're not, but the symbolism is very clear. They're supposed to parallel each other. Just as Eren becomes hell-bent on revenge for what happened to the people he loves, Gabi is the same. Yes, again, people are going to sit and argue, but she was like that before. Yes, but based on the environment she's grown up in, Eren would have been the same. If Eren was in Marley, raised in Marley, and this has happened, 1000% Eren would be doing the exact same thing as Gabi. This is the point. They may be raised under different conditions, but war still impacts them in such an irrevocable way that revenge becomes their sole focus, in a sense that it is what's fueling them forward. It's what's motivating them. It's pushing them. It's driving them. They are similar, but different, but they are supposed to represent the true impact of conflict on children and how child soldiers become subsumed into violence because of what they've witnessed, and the cycle repeats itself. Because then when they strike vengeance against the people that they believe have hurt them, then the loved ones of that person then wants to seek vengeance against them. So the cycle just repeats and repeats and repeats. And at some point you have to ask the question of, when is this going to end? When is the cycle going to be broken? Somebody has to break this cycle at some point. And I think that's what Eren's mission is to do, is making himself the enemy, but in doing so is going to break the cycle. And one of the theories I've kind of been running with is we see him taking other titans, and I'm wondering if that's for an ulterior purpose. Much like we've seen that the Founding Titan was locked, right? It was locked by the vow of Karl Fritz. Could this be a similar process of where Eren locks the additional Titans behind a vow, meaning that they can't be passed down, thus ending the cycle of using Titans as a weapon? Maybe he's using them at the minute because he needs to win this war that's begun. But in the end, inevitably, he's going to lock them behind the vow. So then no child has to sort of go through the same thing that the children of Marley have gone through, but also what was thrust upon him by Grisha. I don't know, but it's very odd that he's kind of collecting them like Pokemon cards. It can be that he genuinely wants them because then he's the all-powerful Titan, because he has all the Titans, so nobody can really challenge him in that regard. Or it could serve a deeper purpose of, I'm going to seal them away so then nobody has them. Kind of as if to say, if the Titans are the reason why humanity can't work together, because of the threat that they pose upon everybody, because only audience can turn into Titans, then if we just take them out of the picture, then can humanity come together and coexist peacefully? If the Titans are no longer a factor, then is there really any justification for discriminating against the audience? Because they can't turn into the weaponized Titans. Yes, you could still turn them into pure Titans, but there would be no purpose to turn them into pure Titans if there was no way of gaining the intelligent Titans. We know it's the ability to become Titans that puts the audience at odds with every other society, but also in the way in which they've been weaponized throughout centuries. But if there is no access to the intelligent Titan, then there would be no reason to turn them into pure Titans because they can't control pure Titans. From what I can gather, when you turn people into pure Titans, you are essentially doing it as cannon fodder because you expect them to be killed inevitably. They're to serve as sort of an additional destructive force, an additional distraction to allow the intelligent Titans to then come in and steamroll. We kind of saw that in the first episode when they dropped the Pure Titans down ahead of Reiner and Zeke. They didn't survive, because most of them didn't survive the fall because the trajectory was off, but there were also anti-Titan weapons that also took out the majority of them. So again, if the intelligent Titans, the 9 Titans, are locked away, sealed away, then there would be no reason to turn people into pure Titans, and therefore the threat that the people of Aldia possess, aka the subjects of Ymir, no longer exists because they can't access it. So therefore, they're no longer the monsters that society is portraying them to be. They're no longer the threat that society is portraying them to be. So potentially the whole goal of this is to eventually lock away the 9 Titans. So then it can't be used as an excuse or a justification to discriminate against the audience and to justify keeping the audience in internment camps. Yes, they can still turn into pure Titans, but again, without the ability of turning into intelligent Titans, there's no purpose really of mass turning people into pure Titans other than as a punishment. But again, they're deployed into the areas near Paradise rather than in Marley. Marley would have no use for turning a bunch of people into pure Titans because they can't control them in the same way. They're essentially just seen as, we'll turn them into pure Titans because we don't expect them to survive, but they couldn't actually weaponize them properly in the same way that they weaponize the intelligent Titans. So again, my whole sort of theory that I'm running with here is that Eren's going to lock them away because it makes sense that if he locks them away, then the idea of the Aldean people being these heinous monsters sort of no longer exists because they can't access it. So therefore, they're just people at that point. Yes, they could be turned into pure Titans, as I said, but it doesn't serve the same purpose if there's no intelligent Titans, if that makes sense at all. I'm kind of maybe running with this idea that there is a bigger purpose to collecting the other Titan forms other than just doing it to become more powerful in this upcoming war. I say upcoming war, it's not an upcoming war. It is now a war because war's been declared. But yeah, it's making me think that part of the purpose is to shift the narrative. You can't claim them to be monsters and a risk to society if they cannot access intelligent Titans anymore because that's been sealed away. So maybe that is something that we will see come into fruition because, again, it just makes sense in terms of the story trajectory. They're seen as monsters because of how they're weaponized, how they're utilized by turning them into either pure Titans or intelligent Titans. But the intelligent Titans are the ones that are seen as the true threat because they can think, they can act, they can shift into people so they can be disguised. They are the true threat over the pure Titans. So not having that as an option anymore would maybe ease people into thinking, okay, well, they can't be weaponized to the same extent. So therefore, maybe we can actually live together as a harmonious society. I don't know, but I just think there has to be something else ongoing. And again, I need to know more about why Zeke is working with Paradise and how long this has been ongoing for. Whether this was something that was planned all along, because at this point in time, I'm starting to doubt if anything is true. I'm now starting to think that perhaps Grisha knew or told Zeke to do this because it's part of a bigger plan. Because, but then that would mean Grisha would have had memories. But Grisha could have had memories if you think about it. So maybe at some point Grisha has been transmitted memories too, that he knows what's going to happen. And he makes Zeke do this because it serves a bigger purpose. Maybe it's part of this grand design. Maybe Zeke was always loyal to the cause, always loyal to his parents, but is told that he had to do this in order to ensure that audio was free. If you think back to when he touts on his parents, by the way, tout is slang for telling, sorry, when he tells on his parents to the Malian police, he looks really sort of traumatized doing it. Could Grisha then have told him to do it because it was what needed to be done to protect Zeke because Zeke serves a bigger purpose, to protect his parents because they needed to raise Zeke, to get Zeke on the side of the Malian government because they would never doubt his loyalty, because how could you doubt the loyalty of a child that turned his parents in and resulted in his parents being turned into pure titans? You couldn't ever doubt his loyalty. So maybe that's part of the act. And maybe Zeke was always a patriot at heart, secretly. Because again, there's comments that Zeke has been meeting with people outside of the room in question, outside of the war chief room, meaning he could have been planning things for years, could have been running underground revolts, building a rebellion under the surface. But it makes you begin to question everything. It makes you start to go, was this planned by Grisha or was this planned by somebody else like Emir, and Grisha was given the memories and Grisha just enacted his part in this grand scheme? Who really knows at this point? But I'm beginning to doubt that what we've been told so far in series 3 is the full truth. I'm beginning to think that Zeke didn't just tell on his parents to protect his grandparents. I'm beginning to think that either Grisha told him to do it because he's been given memories from somebody else, or Zeke could have been given memories from somebody else because he's of the royal bloodline. I don't think Zeke did it intentionally. I don't think he did it because he was a staunch Malian supporter. I don't think he did it to protect his grandparents. I think he was either told to do it by Grisha or by memories. And if Grisha told him to do it, it's because Grisha's had memories transmitted to him down the pathways the same way as Eren did in series 1. Or Zeke had memories transmitted down the pathways. So either Grisha had memories transmitted down the pathways and told Zeke that this was something he needed to do in order to ensure that audio was free, or it's the other way around, that Zeke received memories and did what needed to be done to push Grisha in the direction that he needed to go in. I'm beginning to doubt everything at this point and question everything at this point, especially because Falco had dreams of the ODM gear. Falco had dreams of Titans and ODM gear and people flying around. And when I was editing 2x7, Falco, when he emerges, I believe it's 2x7, it's either 2x7 or 2x6. But when Falco emerges, Falco's watching them all flying around, all the Titans fighting, and Falco goes, "What is this?" As if he's already had a dream that this is going to happen when he was lay on the battlefield in series 4, episode 1. because he was having dreams of ODM gear and Titans fighting. So now that's kind of come to fruition. So it's like, well, how did he know that was going to happen? Memories. The memories and the pathways. So Falco, I think, is going to play a significant role going forward. Because why did Falco have similar memories to Eren in series 1? If not because Falco's going to serve a greater purpose too. Eren is not himself. Eren's eyes are weird. Again, looking back while I'm editing, this is the joys of not having an editor. You pick up things after you've watched. Eren has weird eyes. His eyes are almost doing the same thing that Frida's eyes did in series 3 when something's sort of being pulled in the background, like a memory that maybe it's not actually Eren at this point in time, but maybe somebody else. Because again, when Frida's eyes do that, it's Carl Fritz and his vow that's coming out in that moment. That memory is coming out. I have to wonder, is that Carl Fritz coming out through Frida? Eren's eyes do the same thing. They don't go purple, but they do the same thing. It's weird. It's not fully Eren. I think there's someone else also there conflicting with Eren or driving Eren. It's not fully Eren. It's not the Eren as we've known it from episode 1. I think there's something else going on there. Something that we aren't aware of yet, but there's maybe another person driving things forward. Not sure, but it just doesn't align with the Eren as we know it. He's very calm, he's very methodical. It's as if he knows how everything is going to play out in advance. As if he already knows how everything is going to work. Because I think he's seen this all before. I think he saw this all in episode 1 of series 1. I think he knows how it plays out, which is why he's not shocked, which is why nothing seems to really faze him, because he knows what's going to happen. He may not know everything because, again, we saw that emotional break in episode 8 when Sasha dies. That slight emotional break. Because I don't think he knows everything, but I think he knows the main trajectory. But things like deaths of people that he's going to care for are maybe not shown as clearly, or maybe not included because it's not deemed as important as sort of the main things that he needs to focus on to ensure that this war is successful for whatever reason, which I think is to unite humanity at some point. I just think the way of uniting humanity is just going to be absolutely horrendous. I think it's going to be something I find really hard to kind of reconcile myself with, but we're going to see how it goes. But I think Sasha's death kind of shocked him because it's not something he knew was going to happen, but everything else hasn't really fazed him because he knows that that's how it's going to kind of play out, or at least he knows the main points of how it's going to play out, or what he kind of needs to do to ensure that everything plays out the way that he intends it to, because he's following the guidance of the memories that he's been given in order to either ensure it all plays out to plan, or what. So now the real question is he ensuring that it all plays out to plan? Or is he ensuring that it doesn't play out the way the memories showed it? It could be. It could be that he's trying to ensure that the memories don't play out the way that he's been shown them, because he woke up crying. So what if what he's doing now is to actually prevent something worse from happening? Like, we're looking at this being like, this is horrendous, like, what the fuck? But there's actually something worse that could have happened if he didn't do all of this. All of this is to prevent something even more heinous. I never thought of it that way until, like, talking with you guys on the camera, and now I'm like, actually, I always saw it as he's playing out step by step what he's been told, but what if he's not? What if what he's been shown, he's acting against because the idea of it is inconceivable, because it's that horrific? And that everything he's doing now is to prevent this even more horrific catastrophe from happening. What if he's doing what he has to do now in order to ensure that whatever he had memories of never happens because it's that bad? Oh, interesting. Okay, so he could either be enacting the memories as shown because that's part of the bigger plan, or he's working against what he's been shown to ensure that it doesn't happen because it's horrific. So everything we're seeing now could be his way of actually protecting society, which would then align with this anti-hero trajectory because everything he's doing at the minute is horrific, but it's to prevent something even more horrific and catastrophic from happening. So what if the memories were the way of saying, okay, this is what's going to happen in the future. And because he knows what's going to happen in the future, he's now like, I have to do whatever I can to stop this from happening in the future. Maybe. Hmm. Interesting. Okay. So there's two ways that it could go. It could go the way of he's been given the memories and he's following instructions to ensure that this all happens according to plan. Or he's been shown the memories and he's now actively working to prevent that from ever coming into fruition because it's horrific. This is why I love rambling on camera because sometimes things come to me when I'm rambling that I never would have thought of previously, especially based on having edited. Because again, when Eren is talking to Reiner and Reiner said, "You swore that you were going to kill us all in a horrific way," Eren also says to him, "Oh, I vaguely remember that." And I took it as he's moved on, but it could also be read as that the Eren that we're seeing is not the same Eren that we had back in series 2. Because I vaguely remember it almost seems like he's distanced himself from it. Not because of emotional maturity, but because he's not the same person he was back then because there's greater concerns on his mind. And that would kind of maybe fit in with this whole him having to then do these horrific acts to ensure that whatever he saw in series 1 episode 1 doesn't come into fruition, because again the memories he saw in series 1 episode 1 cannot be everything. And based on what we've seen from Yuri knows the future. Yuri said in humanity's fading twilight. Humanity's fading twilight, meaning that the world is going to come to an end. Humanity is going to be pushed to such a brink that there's possibly a point of no return. And I know he's talking in relation to paradise, that in humanity's fading twilight, we wanted to build a paradise. But I think Yuri can also see the future through the pathways. Because if memories can be sent forward in time, could they not then be sent even further forward, but then sent backwards as well? So what if there's different points of time that people exist in, sort of like a multiverse kind of situation? Say Ymir transmitted memories forward, which is the theory that I have run with since the end of series 3, is that down the pathways, Ymir has sent memories to Eren because the beginning episode of series 1, episode 1 is to you 2000 years from now. So that makes me think that it has to be Ymir that sent the memories forward. But then could it be that if somebody's at a future point in time that doesn't yet exist, but in their idea of a multiverse exists, could they send memories backwards to a point in time? Like, how does it work? Is it just forwards in time, or can it also be a futuristic individual also then sending memories back to the present that we're seeing? So we've seen that memories are coming from the past down the pathways, but could there be a futuristic point in time where memories are also then being transmitted back to the present time that we're seeing? Maybe. Or maybe some people are omniscient, that they can see the future and therefore are able to then transmit that future into the memories itself. So maybe there's not a futuristic point and memories aren't being sent backwards, but maybe Ymir is omniscient and she is able to show everything over a large trajectory of time. Okay, so that could possibly be it. That Ymir is either omniscient and can see like a huge trajectory of time and is able to then transmit memories in relation to that timeline, or just as memories can be transmitted from the past, they can be transmitted from the future backwards to the present time that we're seeing. I can't I can't do with weird timeline stuff though. Like time travel and timelines and things like that confuses me. So if that comes into fruition where there's like a futuristic point transmitting memories back, this is when my brain's probably going to break and I'm going to get very confused because I can deal with like logical time frames. So I can deal with the idea of someone from the past transmitting memories forward to the present. I can understand that because it's the past and this is the present. But the idea of the future and transmitting memories back confuses the life out of me because it's like, well, how are they existing at the same time? But how are we seeing what's in the present? But then there's a futuristic timeline already happening where memories are being sent backwards. That's where I'll get lost. But okay, I've rambled for too long. I've rambled for like nearly 40 minutes. I'm sorry, guys. This is a super long intro. Just when I get on camera, I'll start rambling and then I'll start thinking about things. And I'm like, oh, what about this? What about this? Could it be this? And then next thing we know, we have like a 40-minute intro full of theories because my brain has just started spiraling the more I talk. But without further ado, we're going to get into episode 9 of Attack on Titan.
君はこんなことを聞かされても困ると思うけど、聞いてほしいんだ。3年前のあの時ならまだ何かを変えられたかもしれない。
Oh, we going back in time. Okay. Is this back to when they were capturing ships? Like scout ships?
戦士隊を打ち負かし、世界を脅かす悪魔の島。
Oh damn. Is this Eren? Yeah. Did he just camp out at the beach waiting for ships? Like, hello? It makes sense. They need to interrogate them as to what's going on. But the idea of Eren just like camping in the water, like, let's go, is kind of funny to me. Hanji, she's crazy.
私はハンジ。はるばる海を渡っていらしたお客様をお迎えするものです。ああ、どうぞこちらでお茶でも楽しんでいってください。だよね、ニコロくん。
It's like cooperate.
私に構わずこの悪魔どもを撃ってください。
お前の三文芝居に付き合う気はねえって。
She's like, stop.
よく聞け悪魔ども。まああれは汚れた血にかす耳など持ち合わせていない。
ああ、いいのかな。そんな悪口。
Are you forgetting that Eren's here too? God, that is, yeah, a terrifying sight.
これがマーレの挨拶だ。
Sasha got him first? Oh no!
武器を捨てるんだ。
Zeke's little
言う通りに。
companion.
ハンジさん、お招きいただき光栄です。お茶。
She's the follower of Zeke. Interesting. Okay.
エレン。
What? Okay. So, yeah, essentially, I'm believing then at the beginning of this episode, Armin is talking to Eren, saying, we could have changed things 3 years ago, but you wouldn't have it and you've gone your own direction. So there is that moment where Armin is pulling Eren up onto the airship and he like almost hesitates to reach for his hand, and that's not like Armin. And this is because there's friction between them now. Eren's gone down one direction, Armin's going down another. They're not going to fundamentally agree on how to deal with Marley. And I think it's because Eren knows things that he's not communicating with Armin, and therefore it's seen as callous and disgraceful to Armin that his friend could ever conceive of doing such things. Again, I said this from like series 2 that Armin and Eren were going to have friction, that they were going to fundamentally disagree because their personalities are quite different at times. And I had a feeling that at some point, something was going to drive a wedge between them. So 3 years ago, there could have been a change. They could have done something. And this is speaking with, is her name Yelena? Yeah, Yelena. Sorry, I always forget her name. But essentially, she's saying, I've been looking forward to meeting you, Eren. She knows who Eren is because Zeke has most likely told her who Eren is because she's a follower of Zeke. So she knows things about Zeke. So has she told them that Zeke is actually not on Marley's side as much as he pretends to be? I don't know. We'll see. I'm sorry. I'm pausing because this is really exciting because things could have changed, but Eren's decided it's not good enough. Or he's taking matters into his own hands. I don't know. Oh, I'm so excited. This is getting so good, okay? Like, every episode has been, like, better than the next.
さあな、敵であれ味方であれ、信用できねえのは確かだ。
Oh,
さじゃない
Sasha.
でも話し合うことができて情報が手に入るなんてとてつもない幸運だよ。
まあ本当に運が良かった。敵の上陸を阻止できたのは偶然だ。
ほう。なるほど。
Maybe don't hold it that way, Hanji.
それらがマーレ兵の基本装備です。マーレ兵は一師団あたり約2万人で構成され、
Wow, she's really dishing all the dirt, isn't
約
she?
100万人になります。その他新兵器の進歩も目覚ましく、航空戦力にも力を注いでいます。
航空。
ビビってんじゃねえよ。舐められるだろうが。
海や壁を越え、敵が空から現れる移動兵器のことです。
空から来るの？
はい。
He's like, you just completely disregarded what I
マ
said.
ーレ様が少なくとも1年間まともに攻めてこなかった
Because of
理
the
由って
threat of the Titans within the walls being released.
一つは島に放った無垢の巨人が今我々が壁の外でのんびりお茶できるということは、島の巨人をすべて殺してしまった、ということでしょうか。
だったらどうする？なんとかしてマーレに伝えるか？
いや、素晴らしい。期待以上だ。現在マーレは複数の国と戦争状態にあり、パラディ島どころではないというわけです。
Okay. So they knew way more than what Marley ever anticipated.
情報などと呼べるような代物ではありません。
They're an underground
マーレに故郷を
resistance.
奪われ、兵士として徴用された我々はとても非力で、あの大国に抗う気概は失われつつありました。彼に導かれるまでは。マーレや世界の人々が悪魔と呼んで恐れる巨人。私には全く別のものに見えた神です。無力な私たちに
Much in the
希望を
same
見せ
way
てくれ
that
ました。
people saw Eren as a god within the walls in series 1.
私たち
The
は
hope for
ジーク・イ
humanity.
エガーの命を受け上官を撃った反マーレ義勇兵です。その目的は全エルディア
Just
人
like
の
his
解放。
dad. Just like his dad.
すべては生存が危ぶまれるエルディア人の救済を目
論外だ。そんなバカな話に乗るものか。相手は獣の巨人だぞ。
You also killed Erwin, so you can understand why people are pissed. They don't want to listen.
奴らの目的は終始一貫して始祖の巨人の奪還。
It'd be hard
力
not
ず
to
くが
think
ダ
it's
メ
a
なら
trap.
口八丁手八丁尽くせと言わんばかりだな。
Like, I completely understand where they're coming from.
まずは団長殿の話を聞こうではないか。
その秘策を行う条件として必要なものが始祖の巨人と王家の血を引く巨人。二つが揃えば世界は救われる。
He wants to consume Eren,
その秘策を明かせるのは条件が揃ってからだ。
which would mean
大変
sacrificing
積
Eren.
もられたものだな。
それは本当です。思い出したんです。俺が一度だけ始祖の巨人の力を発動させることが
But
できた。
who's to
王家
say
の血を引く巨人と接触した瞬
that
間でした。
Zeke wouldn't also be
その巨人は
stuck,
父の妻であった
bound by the
ダイ
will
ナ・フリッツに違いありません。
Carl Fritz,
ダイ
right?
ナの息子であるジークは解明したのでしょう。
Maybe,
不正のちぎりを出し抜く
but
術を。
there's no guarantee
我
because no one
々
else has
エルディア
been
人に
able to
残
do
され
it.
た唯一の希望を 壁に潜む幾千万もの巨人で世界を踏み潰す地ならしの発動条件を。
Jesus Christ. Is that gonna happen? That's been
どうして今までそんなことを
alluded
黙ってい
to
やがった
way too much.
ヒストリアの身を案じたからです。
This whole like
俺の不
bringing
確かな情報で
down
巨
the
人にさ
walls
せるわ
and
けにはい
setting
かないと
loose the titans
思ってました。
within. That I'm starting to think
軽
that
率な
that's
判
gonna
断だったこと
happen.
を認めます。
If so,
後で
that's
じっくり
fucking
聞こう。
insane. So many
しか
people
し
are gonna
そ
die
れ
if
が
that's the
本当だと
case.
するとジークの秘策にも筋が通る。マーレの調査船からこの島を守るためには、
Mm.
義勇兵の力が必要なのです。
They're leading them astray, sending them into a trap.
調査船だ。
So they've been vital in this.
ずっと助けを待ってた。
She's crafty, isn't she? Very fascinating.
無事か。もう大丈夫だぞ。
And then they're using Armin to get rid of the boats.
あれは敵だ。急げ。飛び込め。飛び込め。
汚れた悪魔の汚らわしい島へようこそ。もてなしてやる。
Welcome!
豚のしょんべんでよろしければな。
You're gonna have a great
断ったのに
time.
上陸許可は下りない。
You have to
悪いが
swim.
泳いで帰ってくる。
I love
あ
Levi.
の頃は楽しかった。
I love that he
まだ
kept
顔も
that
知らない
because
海の向こうにい
it
る
was
人たち
probably the
だ。
last happy memory he had.
でも海の向こうにいる人たちは
Mhm.
敵だけじゃなかった。
ところで、おにゃんぽこんはなんで肌が黒いのですか？
They wouldn't know, would they?
俺たちを作ったやつはこう考えた。いろんなやつがいた方が面白いってな。
誰が僕らを作ったの？
始祖ユミルに力を与えた存在。神だよ。
Because they've never really interacted with people from different races. So this must be like such a huge shock for them. They're like, what the fuck?
海の幸は初めてですか？ニコロはマーレ料理の達人なんですよ。
くそ。嫌なら食うなよエルディア人。お前らなんかに食わせてやる。
Oh, it's heart-wrenching though, because we've lost her, but...
汚ね食い方しやがって。まだまだあるから。ゆっくり食え。
Oh, are they gonna get together though? Because she appreciates his
もうすぐ
cooking.
港が完成するんだ。
Oh, this episode is gonna rip my heart out, isn't it? Because he was blushing.
でも時間をかけて肩書きを抜きにして
People
人
can
同
work
士向き合え
together.
ばきっと分かり合える。このままイエレナたちの作戦通りに進めていいのかな。
何か問題が？
Is
本
her
当に
plan
地ならして世界を
to
脅すことでしか
infiltrate?
エルディア人を守る術はないのかなって。
No, it's to use
そ
the
れじゃ
rumbling.
本当に世界を恐怖
Yeah,
に陥
I
れる
agree with
悪魔だ。
Armin. I can see Armin's perspective
そうなる前
100%.
に話し
You're
合え
just
ないのか
playing
な。
into the narrative that you guys are the devils then.
誤解を解けば。
誤解？誤解って何のことだよ。世界から見れば俺たちは巨人に化ける怪物だ。そこに誤解はないだろ
でも、仲良くなれたマーレ人もいる。
う。何人だ？
Not
ほ
enough.
とんどのマーレ兵は収容所の壁を睨みつけてんだろ。
それだって、時間をかければ。
He's gonna say they don't have time,
時間が必要だ。
isn't he?
そうだ。時間を稼ぐためには手出しできねえようにしてやるんだ。
Why? You have to show me this again.
僕たちは正しかったのかな。もしかしたら別の道があったんじゃないかって。そればかり考えてしまう。誰よりもエレンを理解しているつもりだった。
No.
ミカサよりも。でも、もうわからない。
Ah, it's heart wrenching because he's coming to understand that Eren's deviating away from him and Mikasa. And I said this that they were going to look for ways that were diplomatic, ways that didn't resort in casualties, whereas Eren is driven by whatever force he has ongoing, that they don't have enough time. That's how he sees it. There's not enough time. Zeke has 3 years. Zeke is kind of leading this underground resistance against Marley. If Zeke dies and it passes to Colt, there's no guarantee that Colt will go along with that. He'll have Zeke's memories, but again, he doesn't have the royal bloodline, so then you kind of lose that as well. So I can see where Eren's coming from, that we don't have enough time. If we had time, we could allow them to get to know us and we could break down those misconceptions. But we don't have time, because if Zeke is going to die, we lose that royal bloodline. We also have to keep them at bay. This isn't something that's unlearned overnight. This is something that's unlearned over years. But at the same time, I also understand Armin's perspective that if we go along and release the Titans within the walls upon the world, are we then not just exactly what they say we are? We're playing into this narrative. We're not actually breaking down that misconception. At some point, the cycle has to be broken, and Armin doesn't want to continue to be seen as a monster. Yes, again, Eren says that's exactly what we are. They're not wrong in how they view us. How they're perceived isn't wrong, but the justification for it to discriminate against them is wrong. But at the same time, you can also kind of empathize. You can understand why these other countries are not wanting to accept a narrative that doesn't portray them as monsters, because they've spent centuries fearing them. They have been used to ethnically cleanse them. They've been used to conquer them. They've had nothing but bad experiences with the Aldean people, whereas if they had good experience with the Aldean people, then their perspectives would likely shift. But again, that takes time. They're also traumatized people. But it's incredibly frustrating because, again, they don't have the time. But if they play into the role of being the monsters that they're perceived to be, then that perspective is never going to change. They're going to constantly be seen as monsters. And I think in Eren's mind, he's like, if they think we're monsters, then fine, we're monsters. Let's show them how monstrous we can be. Whereas Armin and Mikasa are, well, they have come here with preconceived conceptions, and we've seen those break down. They've realized we're not actually the devils. They've realized we're not these hideous, heinous monsters hell-bent on their destruction. Shouldn't we be focusing on how we can break down that narrative and come together and work together and bring peace instead of violence and replicating that cycle over and over again? It's such a hard one, because at the same time, it's like peace was not an option. The minute that Marley struck the walls, peace was never going to be an option. War was always inevitable. But at the same time, it's really difficult as well, because you want somebody to just break the cycle, to be the change that they want to see in the world, instead of just replicating violence again. Because in striking back by using the Titans, then they are again just replicating that narrative that the audience are monsters, that the audience cannot be changed, that they cannot be worked with, that they cannot be anything more than what they've been perceived to be. But again, what choice do they have? The whole world is coming against them. Their people have been routinely discriminated against since Marley took over, but since the other countries also took back their countries, they've also discriminated against the audience, because the audience were used to massacre their people too. So again, it's such a difficult one, because Armin is right, but at the same time, they don't have time when everyone else is working together to band together to seek their destruction, and have already begun the process of that by sending 3 children to attack the walls to begin with, to see if they could provoke the founding titan to strike. And they know that that didn't happen. So they then know that the words used to justify Paradise's peace are false. Therefore, they're a viable target. So they can't just sit back and allow themselves to be wiped out. They can't. It would be foolish to do so. Allowing themselves to be massacred is exactly what Carl Fritz wants. And that's the only way he can see them atoning for the sins of the past. He doesn't actually see them being able to eventually work with Marley and the other countries on the continent to actually build a society where everyone is included and everyone is equal. Again, you can kind of understand why they don't see the audience that way, because again, they have been used to brutalize their societies, so therefore it's hard for them to see them as people, but that's because they've not really had any interaction with them that's positive. Because again, in Marley, we do see interactions between the audience and the Malians and how they begin to reconcile with each other and even grow to care for the Audian individuals. Magif grew to care for the candidates in a way that he previously probably never would have viewed the audience before if he wasn't in that position. He does genuinely come to care for them. The guards on the gate cared for the candidates too. They wanted to protect them. They didn't have to do that, but they did. So there is instances where we're seeing the Malians actually caring for the audience over time because of positive interactions. They begin to see them as people and not as monsters. But that takes time, and it's time that they don't have, and that's the really tragic thing here, is that I agree with Armin, but at the same time, I also understand where Eren's coming from, is that we don't have time because we know that they're gunning for us. We know that they are hell-bent on our destruction. So what are we supposed to do? Just sit here and allow it to happen? That's what Carl Fritz wants. And we fought to ensure that the people of paradise knew the truth, that they were no longer ignorant, so that we could make our own decisions about our freedom, about our lives, and not just be sitting ducks waiting for Marley to strike. That's what they fought for. That's the freedom that they have held so dear and deeply. And that's what Eren wants to continue to protect. And, like, it's so difficult to be in this situation because I can see all perspectives from this, and the really optimistic, positive side of me is wanting to advocate for a change. It's like somebody has to break the cycle. The cycle has to be broken somewhere. Where do you draw the line? When do you stop just resorting to violence? But how do you diplomatically approach people that are going to come in with violence and have no desire to speak to you? You can't, because then you're just going to be massacred and then there's no end to it. So the cycle's repeating itself because you have to meet violence with violence, because otherwise you're going to be in danger and the people you love and care for are going to be in danger. Because if they're not willing to actually sit down and talk with you, which Marley's not, how do you reconcile with that? You can't. Yes, they can do it here because it's small individual groups. They can do that. They have the time to do that. But this is an entire population of people, and not just Malay, but all the other countries that we've now seen them get on side to target paradise. It would take centuries. The only way to ensure it would be to literally wipe out half the population and start from scratch. But, like, that's extreme. So kind of war was inevitable. Violence being met with violence is inevitable. But I hate to see it. I hate to see the replication of violence, and I hate to see the cycle repeating itself, because again, it's as if no one is learning from this. Nobody is changing. But how can you be the change if no one else is willing to work with you either? Because if you're happy to sit there and be the change, that's not going to stop someone from Marley putting a bullet through your skull. You know what I mean? That's why I find it so difficult, because it's like, I want the cycle to be broken. I want somebody to advocate for a different way of approaching things, like Armin is, which is the diplomatic approach. But if Marley are not willing to do that, you have no choice but to meet them in war, to meet them in a battle. Otherwise, everyone you love is going to be gone, because who's going to protect them if not you? It's really hard. It's a difficult situation. I think war was inevitable, and I will put my hand on my heart. War was inevitable. War happened the minute Marley struck first. I think what breaks my heart is just how similar they all are and how alike they all are, but they can't quite see it. And because they can't quite see it, the cycle is going to continue. But again, the cycle can't be broken, because how can you break it when people are hell-bent on your destruction? So, like, I think at this point in time, I hate to say it, but I am kind of on Eren's side here, that they don't have the time for allowing people to come to terms with who they are as people, that they're not devils, because that would take centuries. That's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not a shift that's going to happen overnight. And in that process, are they just going to stand by and allow Marley to continue mistreating them? To allow Marley to continue attacking? To allow their people to suffer? No. Something has to change, but they also have to protect their people. That's the hard thing, is that war was inevitable, but the immeasurable loss of life that's going to happen is what breaks my heart. I can't see any other way out of this because the diplomatic approach isn't going to work. But at the same time, I agree with Armin that something has to change, because if we just continue to play into that narrative that they have of us, nothing is going to change. We're just going to continue to be everything they hate us to be, and nothing's going to progress. Everything's just going to replicate over and over and over again. But it's hard. It's a hard one. It's just tragic. And I think it's supposed to be tragic that you can see the ways in which they can go about doing things differently, but they don't have the time to do it because Marley's hell-bent on their destruction. And if they do go with Armin's plan, that means sacrificing everything that they know and love for the hope of something changing, but with no guarantee. And I guess some people could argue that the idealistic hope of change is better than perpetuating the narrative of yourself as the monster and for cycles of vengeance and violence to continue. But then the other side of things is, if that doesn't work, you've just sacrificed everyone in paradise, everyone you've loved and grown to care for, your home. They're going to be conquered and mistreated too. And the amount of people that are going to die in the process is innumerable. So at some point, you have to protect what you love and care for most. But again, you have to break the cycle somewhere. It's such a hard one. It really is. Formed to investigate Paradise Island after the operation to retake the Founding Titan had failed, the First Fleet embarked in 851. Over the following 3 years, approximately 4,600 soldiers aboard a total of 32 scout ships and destroyers were sent to Paradise Island. However, not a single one has returned to Marley to this day. We knew that there were a lot of scout ships that were no longer seen, but I didn't realize it was that many. Jeez. Oh, we jump back to the present. Cycles repeating. Oh.
なんでだよ。本当にサシャは死んだのか。
Oh.
なあ。なんで。お前ら何やってたんだよ。
He just came here to mourn her and he was being abused. The same as what happens in Marley with the audience. It's crazy.
訓練されていた。
俺の油断があった。すまない。なんで俺に謝る。俺はただ飯を用意してただけだ。
あいつにうまいもんいっぱい食わしてくれてありがとな、ニコロ。
You must have really cared for her.
俺とサシャは双子みてえなもん。
They were.
自分が半分なくなっちまったみてえだ。
I'm trying to hold it together.
娘が世話になったようやな。
Oh! And it's the little girl that she rescued.
俺は捕虜のマーレ人ですが、料理人として就労許可を持っています。娘さんは俺の料理を誰よりもうまそうに食べてくれました。だから、もしよかったら、俺の料理を食べに来てください。
もちろんただなんやろ。
はい。
He could have been really mean to him, but he wasn't.
戦勝と報じたわけか。恐ろしいね。
あは
何も知らないってのは。
だが、お前の言う秘策とやらが本物なら、切り刻むのを少し待ってもいい。
Firstly, sorry, Sasha's dad must have taken in the little girl that she rescued in series 2 and like raised her because she lost her parents. So that's heart-wrenching. Oh my god. And then he could have mistreated him as a Malian, but he didn't because he brought his daughter joy. So he wanted to share that with him because the food brought Sasha joy. She was very food orientated, and because he knows that it's his last way of feeling close to his daughter. The way that Levi just said, if your secret plan works, I can't wait to chop you up, makes me think that instead of staying for his final year and allowing Colt to consume him and become the next Beast Titan, he's here to allow Eren to consume him, because when Eren consumed Lana, there was that weird like sound of like their bloods commingling. So it was like she became a part of him. I know that memories become a part of them, but it's almost as if the blood becomes a part of them too. Eren consuming Zeke meant that he'd be able to control the Founding Titan because they share a similar bloodline because they're brothers through Grisha, but different enough that Eren could bypass the vow of Karl Fritz because he's not of that bloodline, but him and Zeke still share a bloodline through Grisha, which meant that's the way around it. That's kind of like the royal bloodline mingles in me, but I also have this other bloodline. So because their bloodlines are similar, that they then are close enough that he can use the abilities, but he's still removed enough from the royal line that he's not bound by the vow. At the beginning of this episode, I was like, oh my god, is he trying to kill Eren? But that wouldn't make sense. I don't know why I came to that conclusion. It kind of sounded like that was the case because he only has a year left. But then I thought maybe he wants to consume him so he can make that year count. But no, it makes more sense if Eren consumes Zeke because Eren has longer. Eren has 8 years left, whereas Zeke only has 1. Based on Levi saying, if this secret plan of yours works, I can't wait to chop you up, makes me think that Zeke is going to sacrifice himself to Eren so that Eren can control the Founding Titan and the abilities that come with it without being blocked by the vow, because the bloodlines are similar but different enough that Eren isn't bound by it. And also the royal bloodline would mingle in his bloodstream. But again, he has a multitude of other bloodlines, which probably gives him a workaround. But I don't know. That is sort of the hill I'm dying on right now, is that at some point Eren's going to consume Zeke because he's saying, don't I get to meet Eren first? So. You killed Erwin. How could he not glare at you?
本当に何と感謝を申し上げればよいことか。諸君らには借りしかない。無知な我々を希望へと。
What are they going to do with the serum? Create more pure titans?
この3年間、エルディア人の友人であることを証明してきたつもりでしたが。
虫のいい話ですまんが、我々の弱さにしばしの間だけ目をつぶってくれぬか。ジークに枷をかけぬわけにはいかんのだ。
すぐにまた我々と食卓を囲む日が来ます。
They're loyal to Zeke, so I can understand why they're a bit hesitant, because they're kind of like,
何か不満でもあるのか。
You've been our friends for now, but who's to say how much longer now that Zeke is actually here? No, my baby Falco. She's hellbent.
エレンは一人でもやるつもりだった。エレンに協力しても見放しても最悪の選択になっただろう。戦艦も軍人も民間人も全てを巻き込んで。
Oh, the OST.
奪った。でも、あの軍港が健在だったら、すぐさまマーレ軍はこの島に報復攻撃しただろう。
Armin's having to wrestle with how he feels about all of this.
やるしかなかった。
I feel like Armin. I want to hope for the best, but there's no other. It's Annie he's talking to.
何か答えてよ。勝てなきゃ死ぬ。勝てば生きる。
戦わなければ勝てない。
Oh my god, he's hot. I love that haircut on him. Jeez. Oh my. Feels weird because we've seen him grow up from a child. Now it's like, oh, he's hot. Yeah. Well, I mean, he's an adult now, but still feels a bit weird. But I love that hairstyle on him. But I kind of feel like this whole episode is very indicative of Armin's thinking, of Armin reconciling with we really don't have a choice. We either fight or we die. And I feel very like Armin. I feel as if like Armin's been wrestling with these emotions of could there have been a different way? Could we have done things differently? Could we have found a way that didn't result in the extent of civilian casualties that we've seen? Or did we really not have a choice? And then he's eventually come to the conclusion of we didn't have a choice, because if we didn't do what we did, Marley would have struck and we would have all died in the process. We would have lost people too. So in the end, I kind of have come to the same conclusion as Armin. So I feel like as Armin's wrestled with these emotions, me as the viewer has also wrestled with these emotions. I know that there's people that would have come to a conclusion a lot sooner than I did, and that's okay. But I am like Armin in the sense that I want to believe that there is a better way that things can be conducted, that there is an opportunity to break the cycle of violence and vengeance and find a way forward. But I'm also of the understanding that there really isn't a choice here. You kind of have to pursue the option that's available. And the option that's available right now is defending paradise, defending the people within paradise. There isn't much of a choice. And as Armin's saying to Annie, we killed any hope for peace, but we had no choice, just like you guys. In the same way that Eren, when he met with Reiner, was saying that I'm no different to you, because I also have to push forward and I have to destroy my enemies to ensure that my people are safe, that I protect humanity. It's funny to see the parallels between Zeke and Eren in terms of the fact that Yolanda says that she saw Zeke as a god, that he was this magnificent godlike figure that brought hope of one day Aldia being free, that people would no longer be oppressed, that they would have an opportunity to exist and thrive. Eren was also likewise referred to as a god in Series 1, which was why the military police wanted to get rid of him. He was their hope for a better future. He was their hope to put an end to the Titans, because at the time they thought the Titans were the enemy. So Eren was also seen as a godlike figure. So both of them have been seen as the hope for humanity. Both of them have been seen as the hope for the Aldean people. Eren, I think, is going to be seen as this symbol too. More so now because of what he's gone on to do in Marley. Again, I think there's going to be a fracture in society. Some people are going to agree that what they do is correct, and some people are not going to agree with it. I didn't expect to see Armin talking to Annie, and because this is the first time we've seen Annie since Series 1, we're likely going to get Annie come out of this cocoon soon. Hopefully. It's been a long time, and I would love to hear about Annie's sentiments, about how Annie feels about all of this. I didn't know who he was talking to. I thought maybe Eren was locked up and Armin was talking to Eren. But seeing that he's gone to speak to Annie is crazy. I think he's trying to find understanding in putting himself in the same situation that Annie would have found herself in. That he's able to see that we're no different to you. We didn't have a choice. We've had to do what we thought was necessary to protect our home, just like you did what you thought was necessary to protect your home from who you thought were the devils, which was us. All of them have been forced into an impossible situation. And that's why it's so difficult to condemn anyone, because none of them really have had a choice. It's do or die, win and live, or fight or die. They don't have a choice. They have to do what's best in this situation. And Eren coerced them into being there, to participating in it, because he used the whole, I'm a founding titan, you kind of have to come and get me, otherwise. But they didn't go essentially willingly. They were kind of coerced. They couldn't leave him there, because if Marley got their hands on the founding titan, that's going to spell the end of paradise as you know it. Eren is sort of their last line of defense, really, against Marley. He is the symbol of them winning this war. If they lose him, they have Armin, yes, as the Colossal, but they also lose Eren, who is one of their biggest assets, and the Founding Titan especially. It's too powerful to risk. But even as Armin says, whether we had gone or not, Eren would have done it himself, single-handedly would have done it himself. But Eren wouldn't have got out without Hanji and the rest. They wouldn't have got out. But it also makes sense how Hanji knew about the airspace, because she's been told. They've been told about this development in technology when they've captured the scout ships. This is all getting very, very exciting. Gabi is still hellbent on getting to Eren. I don't know how that's going to play out in the future, but maybe we'll start to see a Gabi that unlearns the behavior. I'm wondering if potentially that is an option. That the more Gabi interacts with them, the more she begins to realize that she's been brainwashed, and maybe we begin to see this radical shift in Gabi. Again, I can understand why Pixies is like, we kind of have to lock you guys up and take precautions, because now that Zeke is here, you guys are loyal to Zeke. Who's to say that you won't suddenly turn on us and work towards our undoing? Yes, you've given us all this information over 3 years, but the inevitable end goal has been to retrieve Zeke. And now that Zeke is here, we need to make sure that we have you under lock and key for now until everything plays out the way that we've planned. And it makes sense. They've got to be cautious. If they're not cautious, they may find that they've got a gun in their bag. I've also seen that they've all got the same guns now that they were shown in the beginning. The standard Malian guns, they now all have them. So technology is advancing, technology is adapting in Paradise, thanks to the volunteers. But I love that Pixies does acknowledge that for us to suspect you, we are no better than the devils that you thought we were. He understands that and he's embracing it, but at the same time, they have to understand where he's coming from. He has to do what's best for the people in Paradise, and he has to do what's best for the people he cares about. He can't just blindly trust them. Yes, it's been 3 years, but I don't know. People are very good at lying. And now that they have Zeke on the island, who's to say that they won't suddenly turn around and put bullets in people's heads? You know, they have to do what's best. They've got to take these precautions. And I completely get where he's coming from. But again, he must feel awful because they've shared all this technology. They've been helping them for the past 3 years. But it would be foolish, and I would be kind of questioning them if they weren't taking these actions. I'd be a bit like, is this wise to just blindly trust them? So I'm kind of on Beatsy's side here. Like, I get it. I would be doing the same. I would be very, like, skeptical as to how far we can actually trust you. Yes, you've helped us, but at the same time, Zeke is who you're truly loyal to, not us and not Paradise. So we kind of need to tread with an air of caution, which is fair enough. But I also loved how Hanji at the beginning, like, was getting really, really excited because this is her bread and butter. She's been shown technological advances that she could only have dreamed of. And she's like, oh my God, these things are real. Tell me more. Tell me everything. I want to know everything. And Levi's like, please, for the love of God, Hanji, just fucking hold it together. Hold it together, because you're making us look weak because they're so technologically behind in comparison. And he's worried that they're going to use this information to turn it against them by going back to Marley. If they somehow got back to Marley, they could be like, well, they're not actually prepared because this is all the areas they lack in. Levi's like, we don't need them to know that we're not up to date with the same technology as they are, but they have technology of their own. Like, the ODM gear is fucking cool, and Marley were not prepared for that. And because they weren't prepared for it, it worked so well, especially because it's such a densely built up city. Them having the ODM gear and them not being necessarily prepared on how to combat the ODM gear was what gave them a fighting edge. Zeke saying, but don't get to meet Eren first, kind of rules out the theory I had that they've already met, because he's saying it as if he's never met Eren before. But then why did Eren have the baseball glove and the baseball? Unless it was to try and find connection with Zeke, because he knows that Zeke uses baseball terms, but I don't know. I thought that was maybe hidden symbolism in previous episodes that they had actually been meeting in Marley, but then it would be too risky. Seeing Niccolo being beaten and mistreated for being a Malian, that he's considered scum and beneath the audience is a direct parallel to how the audience are being treated in Malay. Again, it's showing how easy it is to dehumanize and discriminate against people that you view as the enemy. Niccolo doesn't deserve to be treated that way, much in the same way that the people in Malay who are audience don't deserve to be treated that way. In a sense, he's more likely now to empathize with the audience because he's undergoing the same treatment that he and his people have given to them back in Malay. But he's probably now able to recognize just how horribly they've been treated by himself, by his family, because he also believed they were devils when he arrived. He's unlearned that behavior the longer he's been here and the more he's interacted. And Sasha probably contributed to that. Sasha probably helped him unlearn that bias because she loved eating his food. She probably encouraged him. She probably spent a lot of time with him. It seemed like he cared for her because he blushed when she complimented his food. So likely no one has ever complimented him that much before. So it does look like there was maybe a little thing between them, especially because he came to see her grave and he came to mourn and he reached out to her father and offered for him to come and eat at his restaurant. Maybe some aspect of a relationship. I don't know. It seems very vague. He keeps saying she loved eating my food more than anyone else and is trying to like reach out to Sasha's dad to be like, you know, please come and eat my food as well, because it's the one thing that she truly loved most in this world at this point in time. And it's a way for them to bond and for him to also console her family that have just lost their daughter, that they can then come and share in the food that she loves so much. And it's a way of remembering Sasha and a way of honoring her memory too. But it does seem as if maybe there was more to their dynamic than is shown, because he kind of refers to her as somebody that would come and eat his food. He doesn't really speak about her in romantic terms, but the way in which he's grieving at her grave, the way in which he's like very emotionally broken by her death shows that there was a lot of feeling there for her, because he's saying, you know, why apologize to me? All I did was cook her food. But everybody around is offering their condolences because they must know that there's more to it than just that there was feelings there between them, maybe feelings that neither of them really declared to one another, or maybe it was feelings that they had just recently shared with one another before she went on this mission. But either way, there's clearly something ongoing between them for everyone to offer him condolence over the loss of Sasha, because they also lost Sasha. They lost their friend. They lost their comrade, but yet they are there to help him grieve. So there has to be a stronger connection between them. And he's also incredibly angry about how she could have died. He's almost blaming Connie and Jean, like, how could this have happened? Where were you when this happened? So it's almost as if he kind of entrusted them with Sasha's safety. Again, hinting that there's more to this relationship dynamic than what we've currently seen so far, because why would he be berating them if there wasn't something significant happening between him and Sasha? Because he's blaming them as if to be like, I trusted you guys to look after her. Why did this happen? Where were you when this happened? Why did you let this happen? And Armin coming to this understanding as well that he doesn't know Eren as well as he thought he did. Mikazu is also probably coming to that understanding that the Eren she thought she knew isn't necessarily the Eren that's before her. She doesn't understand him the same way that she thought she did. Even Armin's beginning to doubt if he ever fully knew Eren, or if he just knew the side of him that he had grown to love and care for. But there's this other side to him that's more brutal, more cold, that he never anticipated. But that's a side to him that's brought about by war and conflict. It's not necessarily a side that he would have had as a child. Yes, he was very emotional and out for revenge as a child, but that could be sympathized with because they also have lost people that they loved and cared for and wanted revenge for the people they loved and cared for. So they could understand it. But this Eren that is hell-bent on a war at any cost without care for the amount of lives lost in the process is probably an errand that they can't quite reconcile themselves with, because they're so hell-bent on finding another way, of finding an alternative. And of course, they know that there is no alternative. A war has to happen if they are to protect the people in paradise and the people they care for and the people that they love. But at the same time, you can completely understand why they also want to find another way, because how could you not? How could you not want to find a direction that doesn't result in the loss of life, in people being senselessly killed? At some point, a line has to be drawn, and I can completely get where Armin's coming from. He wants to make sure that they really had no other choice before this became the only way forward. He wanted to see if there were other ways that they could bring about a resolution without war. And I think, again, now he's come to that decision that there really wasn't any other path. There was nothing else they really could have done. But again, I still love that he has that ability to empathize and think logically about wanting to ensure that there was no other direction that they could have gone down first. If war has to happen, if they have to fight, then he wants to be sure that every avenue was exhausted beforehand, rather than just going in thinking that this is the only option and therefore we're just going to replicate the cycle over and over again. Yes, the cycle is still being replicated because violence is continuing and the need for revenge is going to continue. With the more loss of life, the more people are going to be driven by revenge. So the cycle does repeat. But at the same time, what other choice do you have? If all other avenues have been explored and you don't have the time to allow people to address their bias and unlearn that bias, then what other choice? You have to go to war to protect the people you love and care for. You have to fight in order to win, and you have to fight in order to live, and you have to fight to be free. That's the point that they're at now in the story, and they know that. And that's what I love about this episode, is that, like Armin, me as the viewer who hadn't quite made a decision on how I felt about it, also has to come to that reconciliation with the other avenues that we want aren't necessarily avenues that are open and available to them because of time. They don't have time. And it's the tragic thing, is that they don't have time. They have to do what's necessary to protect the people they love and care for. But at the same time, we don't have to always sanction the actions. This is the other thing. You can see war as inevitable, and you can see war as a justified action to protect the people you care about. But you also don't have to sanction the massacre of innocent civilians. Because yes, there are casualties in war. Civilians will always be casualties in war, and it's horrible. But the aim of war is to always minimize civilian casualties, which Jean says. You can see war as the only avenue available to you because no other options are available. They are exhausted. But you can also then want war to be conducted in the right way, which is minimizing civilian casualties as much as feasibly possible. Of course, it's never going to be perfect, but you don't want to go in just treating everyone as a valid target, because not everybody is a valid target. There are people there that don't agree with what's going on, and there are people there that genuinely have no power, no say in any of this. They are brainwashed, they are manipulated, they don't have a say. So they shouldn't be treated as legit military targets. But there'll be people that argue otherwise, and that's okay. You can argue that. I'm just not going to agree with you. That's okay. You can argue that everyone should be treated as the enemy. I don't agree. I agree that war is inevitable, but it should be focused on actual military targets, not innocent civilians that have no power or say in this. And I think it's heinous if we treat everybody as a valid military target, as a valid enemy target, because then you're no better. You're not doing it to defend your people anymore. You're doing it to inflict as much loss of life as possible. You're doing it to inflict pain and suffering on another. If you were genuinely intent on ensuring the protection of your own people, then you would do it in the way that results in the least loss of life, not in the most loss of life. But I think for now, that's all I want to say, because this has been a long episode, primarily because it was a very long intro where I was kind of talking about theories, and then I've stopped as I've gone through to kind of discuss thoughts and feelings. And this has been a longish outro. I don't think it's been as long as other outros, but I think that's because I have paused to talk more than what I have done in previous episodes. Usually in the other episodes, I paused a little bit and then like talked mostly at the end. Whereas some of the big points that I wanted to talk about, I've already actually talking about. So it's kind of like I've got to the end and I've already hit the points I wanted to discuss. So can't really provide much more to them other than that, because some of the big core things are the idea that Zeke could be consumed by Eren, of Armin coming to understand that he doesn't know Eren as well as he thought he did, but also understanding that they really didn't have a choice because no other avenues are available to them. And whether they went or not, there was no changing what was going to happen. Eren was still going to pop out from under the floorboards the way that he did. So whether they went or not, the result was going to be the same. But at the same time, you have to fight in order to live. And if they sit back and do nothing, are they not as bad as Carl Fritz, who was more than happy to sacrifice everyone in paradise if it meant atoning for the sins of the past? And not only sacrificing them, but leaving them in ignorance in the process, of never allowing them to know the full truth of everything that's happened in their history. You're then just as complicit in the government that you've overthrown in keeping everything the way that it was. At some point, you have to stand up and defend the people you love and care for. And this is kind of what this is showing, is that in a sense, the people in paradise have broken their cycle. They've broken the cycle of ignorance, but they've also broken the cycle of being trapped. They are free to determine how they pursue the future in a way that they never were able to do before because of this vow and because of their history being wiped. They have the freedom to decide how they embrace the world, but not just how they embrace the world, but whether they actually fight to justify their existence in this world. They're no longer being dictated to. They are fighting for their freedom. They are fighting for the chance to exist and thrive in this world. They are fighting for their right to exist in this world because they were born into it. But not just that, they're also fighting for the audience that they know are being abused. They want to fight for all audience to be free of injustice. And that's something I can understand and get behind, but just not at the expense of civilian casualties in Mali. Because at the same time, you can't punish innocent civilians for what their government and the people in power have done. Because then at the same time, you're just then doing the same thing that Mali has mistreated you for. You're mistreating them in the exact same way they've mistreated you. So at some point, you have to be the change you want to see in the world. Yes, war was inevitable. They had to do this in order to protect paradise. But you can also see the way in which they are beginning to change. The way that they're not hell-bent on taking over land. They're not hell-bent on becoming conquerors or building a new empire. They just want to be free. They just want to self-determine. They just want to be allowed to exist without being seen as a target. They just want to be able to be left alone. But also the comparison to series 1, where they actually now do have the freedom to make that decision, to choose to fight in a way that they never previously had, is astounding. Just how much has changed in so short a space of time. But yes, that is all I have to say for now. And if you watched the end, thank you so much. You are the MVP, because that was a long one. This was a very long episode, long react, but thank you so much for watching. If you watched to the end, this question is for you. If you skipped ahead, it's not for you, don't answer. But this was actually posted in my Patreon chat by Nina. Hi, Nina. Thank you so much for this question, because I couldn't think of one, but I actually think this is a really, really good question. And essentially, if you could know the absolute and total truth to one question in the universe, what would you ask? And I think it's such a good one because everyone's going to have a different answer. I think for me, and as morbid as it is, but I love true crime and I love serial killer documentaries and things like that, I would want to know who killed John Benet Ramsey because it's such a mystery and there's so many theories behind it. But I would love to solidly and categorically know the facts of what happened. It's just a case that's always fascinated me because there's so much. Was it the parents? Was it the brother? Was it an unknown figure? Was it to do with the pageant circuit? Like, there's just a lot to it. When you deep dive into it, there's so many avenues you can go down. I just really want to know who did it and why they did it. You know what I mean? So let me know in the comments below. If you could know the absolute and total truth to one question, what would you ask? I think everyone's going to have really, really interesting ideas here. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this react, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below to help boost this video into the algorithm. And until next time, bye!